Hello, everybody. Welcome to Making It Simple. Hope you're well. Today's Pastor Andy bringing you the newest episode of our conversation about a relationship with Christ. We see so many things today, and I know I've touched on this before, but it bears repeating. We see so much today that is confusing. We don't know which end is up. Some people say they don't know what they are. We've just got a royal mess on our hands. One of the things that has happened is the continual move in that department of confusion and division and what have you, because everybody wants to add their opinion into it. If we look at the nightly news cycles, which I do not, by the way, but if you do, the majority of what you hear is opinion broadcasting, not real. We can all have an opinion. That's not to say whether that's right or wrong. The bottom line is we have that freedom. God gave us that ability. We've talked about that in a couple of prior lessons, how the freedom of free will. We have that ability to have an opinion, be it right or wrong. Sometimes that depends on who's listening or who responds. One of the things that I have tried to do that is my heartfelt goal in our presentations is to not leave you with any confusion. Now, granted, some who are not of any interest in subjects such as the ones that we discuss here, Making It Simple, I get to where maybe they would argue, but it wouldn't be because it's confusing. And I don't say that in an arrogant or a prideful way, but I am very earnest in my efforts to make sure that nothing that is presented here is confusing. Even when we're dealing with deep spiritual matters, such as what we touched on yesterday and we're getting ready to get back into today. Now, there's absolutely a bevy of argument as it pertains to this subject within the community of the church, because the denominational system, the religious system, if you will, has broken it down to where, again, opinion has gotten involved. And some say you do it this way, others say you do it this way, some say it means this, others says it means that. Friends, at the end of the day, division and confusion and chaos and all of those things, it helps nobody. Nobody. When you're left with a question mark and there's no answer behind it, or there's 100 answers behind it, and you have to decipher which one is right, that doesn't help you. There needs to be one definitive answer. And the only way that you're going to come to that place, and I believe this with all my heart, is when you have your heart right with God. I really believe that. Because then we have somewhat of a veil lifted off. We're able to see things like we've never seen them before. We see truth in a very clear way. We see literal in a very clear way. And we see phony in a very clear way. This is not about perfection. This is not about nobody ever making a mistake again. This is not about saying anybody's better than anybody. It's far from it, in fact. It's the humbleness of saying, I don't know everything, but I know who does. And I'm going to trust him. That's what relationship is all about. In this presentation we started yesterday, Jesus has told this group he's talking to, he says, I am the living bread. Now, I explained yesterday the significance, the importance of the statement, I am, because that is a bold statement. That is saying without a question what is going to come after this. I got to be able to back that up. I've got to be able to show you that I am what I just said. That's a big deal. And when he says, I am the living bread. The living word there is so important because we're not talking about a one-time moment. We're not talking about a period of time or an era. We're talking about continual. Oftentimes our discussions do move into the temporary versus eternal. One of the challenges that I try to always put out on every lesson, if at all possible, is the fact that we don't always consider that because of the busyness of life, which goes back to the chaos and confusion and division and all the other things, because it keeps us distracted, if we add another word in there. And when we're distracted, we're not paying attention oftentimes to the things that are important. Let's use driving as an example. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drug-induced driving, texting and driving, whatever the case, if you're not paying attention to the vehicles in front of you, whether they're literally in front of you going in the same direction or coming in another direction or coming from your side, if you are not an alert driver and you are distracted by something you have in your hand or some substance you have in your body that has altered your senses, you're dangerous. And the reason you're dangerous is because you could hurt someone and you yourself could get hurt. How did that help anybody? It didn't. That's why our focus needs to be on our objective. And in particular, when it's driving, it's going forward. When it's living, when we're moving forward in life, Paul references the upward call of God. Now, again, I realize that opens the door to argument for those who say, well, I don't believe in God, or I'm not worried about that, or when I die, I'm not here to argue. The reality is death is real. At the end of that, what you have done to prepare yourself for the next part of that journey, regardless of what you do or don't believe, the fact is death's going to come, whether it's naturally at someone else's hands, at an accident, or whatever. It's going to happen. Many people fear that. I don't believe that you have to, because the Bible teaches us that we can move from death to life. That is the spiritual connotation of understanding my relationship with Christ, because He promises me that He is the living bread, that He came down from heaven for me on my behalf, and that if I will consume and take of this bread, I'm going to live forever. I believe that. I really do. My encouragement to each and every one of you listening to me is that you believe it too. But I want you to do it in your own way. And by that, I mean, I want you to have your own experience with God, your own encounter with Christ. Because I did 23 years ago in Summerville, South Carolina. God spoke to me that night and began the process. Was it perfected that night? Absolutely not. Boy, oh boy, was it not. I still had many years of journey left before me after that night to finally get me to be who I am right now. Even in my years of ministry, I still had a lot to learn. Because oftentimes when you're immersed into something new, there not only should you have a willingness to learn, a humbleness to say, I don't know it all, but a desire to follow the one who does. See, the one thing that we oftentimes let happen, and again, this is a distraction, is we follow other people. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to learn from someone, be it a good thing or be it from someone's mistake. We need to do that. However, this experience must be personal. It can absolutely be something that someone else said. One of the greatest compliments that you can get along the way is when someone says thank you for something that you were willing to share with them that made their life better. I got to get one of those today. Oh, there is no greater feeling than for someone to say thank you for sharing your heart with me, sharing your faith with me. And because of that, I now am pursuing my relationship with the Father. Greatest part of my day today, by far. And I'm so excited about that because this platform, I would have never dreamed. I hesitated for years and years and years to ever be involved in social media or any of this stuff. God has allowed me to use this platform for my daily broadcast and my weekend time with my dear friend Del Wilkes and Avi Klein on Unmasking the Truth with Wrestling with Faith, our podcast of reaching literally millions of people. It's mind-boggling of what God is doing. And as I've shared with you before on this broadcast, if we change one life, it was worth it. I got that report today. There's just no price on that. There's no price on that. Jesus said, "This bread that I will give you is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world." We talked about that yesterday. Immediately, as we'll see in this next verse, it caused confusion because they took this literal. Yeah, literal. Listen, the Jews therefore strove among themselves. This is verse 52 of John chapter 6. They strove therefore among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" They took it literal. Friends, he said, "This bread that I give is my flesh." What was he going to do? His life would be sacrificed. His flesh would be shredded and torn by the cat of nine tails. It would be severed and punctured by the spikes and the nails on the cross. His flesh was given for the life of the world on behalf of each and every one of us. It was not to consume. It was to take part and believe in what it was he was doing with that flesh. Jesus said to them, "I say unto you, except, unless you take of this flesh of the Son of Man and drink of this blood, you will have no life in you." Now again, if we read that in a literal context, we think, well, that's gross. That doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? I'm not going to eat somebody and drink their blood. That's not what he's talking about. We go back to my opening statement of confusion. There are many that teach that you are consuming the literal flesh and blood. That is not what this means at all. Making it simple, getting rid of the confusion, moving that out of the way. You eat of this flesh, you consume, you take of, you believe. Remember, the key word to everything is believe, that what I am offering you will change your life. Do you believe that? That is the consuming of what is being offered. The drinking of the blood. We're not talking about vampires and gross things. No, it is the receiving of the promise of what that shed blood means. He so sincerely meant that he came for the life of the world, meaning everyone who lives in it that desires what it is he's offering. And he sealed that promise with the shedding of his blood. Do you believe that? Because he says, if you do, you'll live forever. He says, if you don't do these things, if you don't believe these things, it is not the consuming, it is not the literalcy of that. He's saying, if you will believe in what it is I'm offering you, I'll change your life. I'll give you life forever. You'll live forever. He says, but if you don't believe, if you reject that, if you say, I don't want anything to do with that, I mean, it's nonsense, it's this, it's that, whatever. And again, confusion, division, chaos, all the stuff in the world right now has caused many people to turn away because they say, I don't want anything to do with religion. This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with God, the creator of all, loving you so much and wants a relationship with you in such a personal, intimate manner that Jesus sacrificed and gave his own life, his own flesh, his own blood on your behalf. He says, if you believe that, you'll live forever. I'll change your life. He says, if you don't, you reject that, you have no life in you. Now be very, very mindful of how that's written. You have no life in you. He does not say you will not continue to live, because life is meant to be eternal. It just depends on where it's going to be. With him or without him. There's no gray area there, friends. There's not. There's just not. He makes it so beautifully clear here. I want this teaching to be crystal clear. The observation of communion in a church setting is a beautiful thing when done correctly and explained correctly. It is a reminder, certainly an ordinance given even by the Lord, but it is a reminder of just how much God loves us, that he would do something so big, so unbelievable, and do it for us because he loves us. We don't know that kind of love in this world because by nature we're selfish. It's not to be critical or mean or judgmental or pointing fingers. It's just true. There are very few people that we would give our lives for. You see my circle right there, with the exception of my wife and my other daughter, my little grandson, my two little girls. We all have friends, we all have loved ones, and we say those things. Even Peter said, oh no, I would give my life for you, Jesus. You said, really? Really? Are you sure? Because before the sun even comes up, you're going to run the other way 3 times. Jesus says here, this is how much I love you. This is the kind of relationship I want with you. And this is how serious I am about showing you that. As we close out this portion of our time together today, this is really deep, and it's very emotional for me when I begin to think about being loved that much. Many people miss out on what I'm talking about because no one teaches it. And I'm not saying I'm the only one. Please don't say that. But very few teach this in such a manner because it gets intertwined with all the other things that I talked about when I opened up. Who's saying it right? Where do you go? Who says this? Friends, that is not what God intended. Anytime something is simple and we add something to it, it almost never makes it better. Never. The simple formulas that are put together to create something, it's good just like it is. Certainly we could get into the realm of food and whatever. So, well, a simple this is good and you put some chocolate on it, it's better. Okay. But I'm talking about the things that are vital to the way we live. I like technology as much as anybody. I like indoor air conditioning and inside plumbing and on so and on so. We've complicated life in places that it's not necessary. And and I believe this, one of the most important areas that has been complicated is one of the most vital areas, and that is our faith life, our spiritual life. You can go to any town, just about anywhere, there's 100 churches there. I used to be the police chief of a very small town in South Carolina many years ago. 500 people in that town. There were 22 churches in that town. 22. All because different people couldn't get along. Oh, but we love Jesus. That's not how it works, friends. God is not honored in that. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody. I'm just saying, when it's that confusing, a lot of people, especially in today's society and culture, they don't want anything to do with that, because this group says you're wrong, this group says you're right, this group says something else, and this group, it's a mess. This, what we're talking about, is very clear. And it's not complicated at all. And I hope that our time together today has helped somebody understand the meaning of this and the clarity of this and the beauty of the fact that God wants a relationship with you. That's my heart. And I'll keep sharing it every day. God bless you. I hope you have an awesome rest of the day. And Lord willing, we'll be back together tomorrow to continue this conversation as he moves on to a little bit further explanation of what this means. And again, this is not for the point of dragging it out. It's the importance of understanding the totality of these statements so that we know there's no confusion. That's really important to me. God bless you. And Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow right back here at Making It Simple.